as we start our discussion, I would just want to ask every one of you. I tried to break down the topic today, but I want to get a feel of your understanding on our topic today. What is your take? What do you understand by the topic you are discussing today? Building a vibrant and resilient national innovation ecosystem to reap the benefit of the digital economy in Tanzania. 1 minute, everyone. Let's start with Lulu, coming this way.
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for having me on this panel. Having TSA represented on the panel, my understanding is strengthening the environment, strengthening the ecosystem, coming from TSA, looking at the enabling or conducive environment for the ecosystem to thrive.
Thank you. Ross?
Thank you, Bakari. And thank you for inviting us as well. Very thrilled to be here. From my perspective, really, it's a very broad question that really deserves extended time to respond to, but I'll keep it very brief. So when we speak of resilience, it's, I take it back to each one of us understanding what role they are playing within the ecosystem and really internalizing what their contribution needs to be so that we all build and journey towards a resilient, future-proof future that will protect, whether we're talking about an economy or a lifestyle. So just being able to look inwardly and check to see if there are capacities and certain levers that need to be in place to make sure that you do arrive at your destination. So whether you're talking about a private sector player, whether you're talking about a public policy contributor, what is it that within your frame and realm of influence that needs to be tweaked so that we all can journey towards a common future?
Thank you, Engineer.
Innovation system for the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation is very important, and I'm glad for the topic today because as we understand, in order to have a good ecosystem, we need policy, we also need finance, we also need to build a culture in our society to be innovative. We also need to have supporters to develop the innovation coming up, as well as the human capital, and also the market. So I believe from the discussion today, we are going to have a better way or a better position in order to have a move to achieve our target. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us for the ministry. You're talking about a system that is, first of all, is adaptive for the current environment and the future, but delivers value for life, but also can be available tomorrow. So that's when you're talking about a system that is inclusive, but again is resilient and can contribute to economy.
Thank you. So we all agree that there's a need to come together. There's a need to make sure that whatever that you want to achieve is actually also put into a proper framework. So you're talking of policies, laws, regulations, which will support and make it sustainable. So to start us up our discussion, Lulu Monakilala, I understand you're coming from TSA, Tanzania Startup Association. And these are the people out there innovating. What do they need? What do they want?
Thank you, Bakari. That's a very good question. I think we, as Tanzanian Startup Association, as a representation of the ecosystem, coming from the ecosystem, owning the ecosystem as well, and representing the ecosystem, there are a number of things. I think a lot of them have been mentioned before. We spoke about investment, financing, talked about capacity strengthening, bridging the skills gap. But I think the most important that we as TSA have been focusing on is the conducive environment, the legal environment. This is having the right legal framework, the policies, the regulatory framework as well, an enabling environment for the ecosystem to thrive. And as TSA, we have been doing quite a lot of work in this area. From the inception, we've been working very closely with the government, with a number of government ministries, but specifically Ministry of Trade and Industry and Trade. And so far, we have already started the process. Currently, we're doing research into the ecosystem so that we can have a baseline for Tanzania. We've also consulted with other countries that have already developed or come up with Startup Act, startup policies, so that we know how we can then tailor-make our own that will support a conducive environment in Tanzania. We're doing the same with Zanzibar, also with the Ministry of Trade, but also trying to see how these policies can support the startup ecosystem as well. So it's very important that we have the conducive environment.
So conducive environment is a loaded statement. What exactly, if you can break it down to specifics, what exactly do they want?
Thank you. So I started off by talking about the legal regulatory framework, and this includes having the right policies in place that are specifically targeting startups in Tanzania, and looking at including the actual Startup Act that will then spell out the actual conditions that will help and enable the startup ecosystem. Because we know that there are certain issues that directly affect startups as a group, and that don't have the right solutions. And we believe by having the right regulatory framework, we believe by having the legal, the right legal framework as well, including the policies, will help resolve these issues. But then also ensuring that the environment itself, these include other, frameworks that somehow hinder the development or the enabling startups to thrive in Tanzania. That creating that space is very important. So this will then, and I think the research will bring out all of these kind of issues so that we can start to tackle and creating that conducive environment.
Okay, and how do you help these startups to be focused? In the earlier panel, we heard about some taking it as an opportunity to just start up something because there is a grant somewhere. So how do you actually make them look at solving a certain problem in the society? As Jumanne said, create value and the service will come to you. I'm still...
Oh, you're still with me? Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we spoke before about opportunities. When we talk about enabling environment, it's quite a wide. It's not a one solution fits all. We're thinking about looking at the whole environment. So we think we look at things like investments, financing. Things like building the capacity. We know that there is a skill gaps. I think Jumanne mentioned as well. Jumanne is also with us within the Tanzania Startup Association. he also mentioned before that there is a need to build capacity of startups as well in Tanzania to be investor ready. Things like that that enable the growth to move from where the starting point that we talk about, but now to scale up and become a lot bigger, but also to attract investments to Tanzania. He spoke a lot about that, and I think these are the kind of things that we look at when we're talking to startups. But it is their ecosystem, so it's the ownership of the startups themselves that they want to ensure that there are opportunities, but there are also the enabling environment for them to grow, including the financing, as I mentioned before.
Thanks, Lulu. Lawson, coming to you. You are kind in the middle. You work with startups, but also you play a key role in facilitating digital operation, digital transformation. But also you are a player who also is regulated by the government. You also want to have some conducive environment to operate. So I want you to match the two. How do you facilitate these startups, but also what help do you need from the government? So take us through how do you play a role in the digital transformation in Tanzania?
Thank you very much, Bakari. So as a telco, as a technology company, our role really, the way I see it, is very foundational. So on top of everything that we're talking about here needs to be a digital, whether platform or connectivity, which is what Vodacom and its partners in the industry really play a role in. So, and in that, it's we collaborate very greatly with regulators, with the ministries, with government in general, to ensure that we actually do roll out the infrastructure and kill any disparities that may exist. So, like Hisham touched on earlier, through a partnership with UCSAF, Universal Access for All, we're able to not only focus on in regional hubs, we're able to take our connectivity all the way to the hinterlands, the rural parts of Tanzania, and ensure everyone is connected. We may sit here and talk about innovative solutions, but if there isn't an existing infrastructure that is reaching everyone in Tanzania, then it is all in vain. So that is an entry point, point number one, that we must make sure that our infrastructure reaches every pocket in Tanzania and provides the basis for innovation to take place, for interlinks to exist, and for the ecosystem to thrive. And that, like I said, requires collaboration with other partners and stakeholders, government being one of them, but also the innovators themselves. And social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, we found ourselves having to work with as a part of now building on that foundation that the infrastructure that would have been rolled out now yields itself as a next step. So we've focused on what we do best, which is technology, rolling out of technologies. Of course, we do a bit of innovating internally, but we also have opened ourselves up to link up with other innovators. Hisham touched on the open KPIs on our m-commerce platform, which allows for now innovators to plug into that whole investment and continue innovating in their spaces and come up with solutions that actually address needs in their communities. A platform, an enabling platform such as that one offered by a mobile network operator just exists so that it's able to make, presents itself as a stage for innovators to plug into. So social entrepreneurs, we continue to work with them. If you look at our foundation, for example, we do take on innovators and their solutions in EdTech, in agriculture. These are all proof points in enabling the whole ecosystem to perform well. We also benefit from subsidies from the World Bank through the UCSAF fund And that is all a very good example of how the ecosystem works together to ensure that every Tanzania is connected, every Tanzanian is connected, and that we're all moving in that common direction. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rosal. You talked about the need to build strong and reliable infrastructure and the need to collaborate. So, are you happy with the level of collaboration you're getting from other stakeholders? What is the missing link for us to move very fast?
So there are multiple stakeholders there that I can touch on. You have the innovators who are extremely eager to collaborate and move together, but there are skills gaps that are lacking that we've found from our own experience having touched on collaborating with that segment. There are good things to be spoken of, but there are also things that we still need to work together in innovating and providing solutions so that innovators can really thrive as we continue to collaborate. That is one, but we've also found, and I think Iku touched on this slightly, the issue of education, right? So, and local content, which goes hand in hand. So we have platforms, like an education platform through the foundation, for instance. There's another one in agriculture, leveraging a technology innovation by Mezzanine. But so in those spaces, you find that digital skills are lacking greatly, right? And digital skills, my understanding is it goes straight back to how we've been socialized and educated. And therefore, there's a need to invest a bit in ensuring that digital literacy is brought up to pace so that we can move towards a digital future and a digital now. And that is why we have programs like Code Like a Girl, which goes into schools, primary and secondary schools, and nurtures these skills from early on so that we can be future ready. But today, as we stand, there is an opportunity, and I believe our Ministry of Education is already looking at augmenting these areas by imparting digital literacy, digital skills, which will make it possible for an environment where innovation can happen and in a sustainable way.
Thank you, Rosaline. You are taking us to our next challenger. And engineer, with them coming to you. You've heard the operators in the field telling us they want to move fast. Yes, infrastructure is important, collaboration is important, but the know-how is a challenge. What is your ministry dealing with education, science, and technology doing about bringing these innovators and other stakeholders up to speed to have the knowledge and the skills which are required to make it happen?
At the ministry, we have various programs targeting to improve or increase the innovation capacity and capability of the country. Starting from the school level, we have programs at primary schools, secondary schools, technical, even at higher education, which are specifically targeting improving the quality and access to the education. And as we know, we are all focusing on the science, technology, and innovation, and we cannot we cannot go into digital economy without the skills. So we have various programs on that. But apart from that, we have specific guideline on the promotion, identification and promote innovation, invention, and traditional knowledge holders. The guideline was inaugurated in 2018. It was the first to guide the development of the innovation in the country. Within the document, we can find the role of various stakeholders in order to build a good innovation system. So it's like all of us are called together to join hands in improving the innovation or improving the innovation system in the country. But we also have the national competition for science, technology, and innovation as one of the activities championed by the government itself. But we know various activities are being done or efforts are being done by various stakeholders, including this Innovation Week. And the government is also part and parcel of the week through COSTECH, which is the working arm on the science and technology from the government. So the government has various efforts from the training aspect and learning by improving, including putting various equipment at the secondary schools, even primary schools, all the way to university level, so that we can, all of us, embrace the digital technology in improving life and economy as a whole.
Thank you. Let me expand it kidogo hapo. Madam President Samia Suluhu Hassan challenged the Ministry of Education that we need to look into our education system and ask ourselves, does it go with the pace of the 21st century? So I want to know whether what you are doing, the effort you are doing already, you are looking into reviewing the education system in its totality to take into consideration the challenges you are facing today and in the future.
As we know, all the challenges we have so far on the education sector, some of them has been identified even before. We have in 2015, we conducted the National Skills Development Strategy or study to identify what are the skill gaps in order to attain the middle income country achieving the Vision 2025. And with that, we had identified some gaps. And then from that moment, the ministry has worked on various stakeholders, including World Bank and others, in order to rectify or mitigate the challenges. So we have various programs even for teachers' education, improving teachers' education, including improving the on-job training aspect, because it's like you can be teaching a 21st century student by a teacher who studied even before. So it's like a teacher is behind the technology. But right now we have those programs are aiming up on the updating the education system. But working on the direct from the president, the ministry is also facilitating the ongoing or updating the curriculum as it is, but mainly focusing on the available resources and also available challenges in order to find a means or ways to mitigate them. And good thing is that curriculum are being done or are being developed by collaborating with stakeholders. So some of us in the room will be witness to the process. Some of us have been involved, and some will be involved as well. But I believe this Innovation Week is also another platform for us, all of us, to come together in order to speak up. You know, sometimes somebody have a solution, but keep quiet, and the government does not know what the idea you have. Those are the innovation. We are also looking at the processing or improving the quality of education as well. So we welcome all the ideas and suggestions in order to improve our education and training skills. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Rosalind, you want to comment? Yeah.
I can comment. I didn't want to, but I can comment. Okay. And I think that discussion kind of comes back to platforms again. So once the content is curated. There exists platforms out there that can collaborate and absorb that kind of content, the curriculum, etc. For example, Vodacon's Instant Schools proposal, it offers a platform where data can actually reside, and we make it available and free as part of our CSR for learners, teachers. We actually launched this in Makisatu last week alongside the Minister for Education. But platforms, basically what I'm trying to say here is that platforms do exist where collaboration can actually happen, and there could be synergies to actually ensure that we reach a lot more people quickly with the content once it's created.
We are thank you very, very much, Rosalind, that we worked with you and all the telcos. And we're trying to ensure that, first of all, the fiber cable is everywhere. Currently, we are deploying the fiber cable to all districts and councils in our country, but also making sure that not only the cable, but the communication towers, as she just mentioned, are available. And we are charged through the manifesto that by 2025, 80% of our country should be connected. And we are just doing that. Coming back to connectivity, yes, connectivity is one of the aspects that we are dealing with. But we're also dealing with creating what she just mentioned, Wanakilala, conducive environment for producing solutions, digital solutions, particularly the ICT solutions in a country. And in the past, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a very good dialogue with various stakeholders in Dar es Salaam. And she was talking about conducive environment. And we have seen what we have to do, and we're doing that in the ministry at the moment, ensuring that we review legal frameworks, we review some regulations and laws that will facilitate the creation of a good environment for startups. Why? Because the 2016 policy, ICT policy that we are implementing now, of course we're going to review it again, we want to create local content. We want to ensure that we have enough, or say an adequate level of local content in our country. That's from skills, knowledge, services, applications, platforms made in Tanzania. So we have a big task, but we are determined. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, or possibly can still conversate.
Yeah. Thank you. You're touching of the need to strengthen the infrastructure and the local content in terms of skills, knowledge, and the product. So I'll be turning to the audience to see if you have any questions, comments, and if you do, just raise your hand, you introduce yourself, and then you tell us to whom are you directing your question or comment.
Thank you very much, and it's really nice to hear all the comments, and I'm really happy to see that Dr. Jimmy Onaz is here. I was in your class in project management. So talking about innovation and the ecosystem generally. So my name is Gomaka. I'm a film producer and director, also an innovator. I work with Thai Studio, where we produce 3D animation as a medium to educate people. So these animations are more like interactive and different from the normal content that we see on a daily basis for education. I'd say 90% of the staff that I'm working with are self-taught, and they've learned through YouTube and online content to do the 3D animation content. And I really appreciate the effort that has been done ensuring that the country is connected and the speed that's going to get us connected. I wanted to ask the effort as well to ensure that internet is being more affordable for young people so that they can access more of online content, as well as once they create their product that can be disseminated through the online platforms, that can be possible as well. Yeah, so I think Dr. Jim Yonaz or Ms. Lozray. Thank you.
So I'll take 3 questions and then we'll respond to them and see if we still have time.
Okay. My name is Sostenes Sambua, and I'm coming from Diligent Consulting Limited. I'm also very happy to be here today. I've been in this process, I think, from the beginning, 2009 until now, and I think it's been a great development. Hongereni sana, HIDIF and all the partners. I think my question to maybe Ludo and the brother and sister from the ministry. I would have wished that you mentioned really, what are the pain points when you say issues to do with policy regulations or Startup Act? What are you missing? Because it's still up there. Is it taxes? Is it patent? Is it financing? I think when you spell out for the government, when they are here, it's easier for them to carry on. What are the things that are constraining startups? And from the Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Communication and the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, I think you've said very good things about building the capacity. My experience, and of course, also as a parent, a lot of schools, especially public schools in Tanzania, they do not use digital means to teach. They don't even encourage pupils or students to use digital platforms to learn. A lot of teaching material is from the book. Actually, some of them handwritten notes from the teachers that they have to memorize and maybe reproduce at the examination. If the ministry, both Ministry of Communication and Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, can you actually come, beyond the policies, can you come up with instructions that schools, especially primary and secondary schools, that they have to use certain things? Because certain schools actually prohibit students, even a secondary school, from using anything digital. If they are found with any digital gadget in the school, they are expelled. And some schools actually follow their students even during holidays. If they are found actually writing things in the social media, for example, when they go back to school, they are actually punished. And I'm saying from personal experience, I think the ministry should do more, not only to encourage, but to enforce that digital platforms are actually now used to train, not at the college level, but starting from the primary. Thank you.
Okay, I'm told we are out of time, so that's all we take from the audience. So let's respond to this question. Internet affordability. Dr. Yonaz and Rosalind.
I think this is one of those favorite questions for audiences when it comes to addressing mobile network operators. So I have a bit of good news and bad news. When it comes to affordability, this question cannot be tackled without looking structurally at how today we roll out our networks and how much perhaps it costs for an operator to put up the infrastructure that makes it possible for one to connect. So again, this is an area where collaboration is key between ourselves and the government, and we've been collaborating quite extensively on this. But it's also, so on the one hand, it is today in Tanzania, for 1 megabyte of data, it is actually being sold under the cost of production, which means in terms of affordability, if it's deemed or it feels like it's expensive today, we're actually trying to journey up towards a profitable balance between cost of production and before that actual unit reaches a consumer. So that is the bad news. But the good news is that it is not a one-size-fits-all type question. So for example, the question that you brought up, Wamaka, touches on entertainment. And our platforms also offer different frameworks for different types of consumption. So when it comes to entertainment, you'll find special bundles, whether it's for Netflix, for YouTube, and I'm here with the director for digital. He can speak a bit more about that perhaps after the session. There are a lot of things that we're doing in that space to make sure that entertainment is accessible and that innovators can also plug into that space and get benefits from it, whether it's from their content now being aired through such platforms and people actually paying for them. And this is all a part of the solution offering. When it comes to education, again, like I said, it's not a one-size-fits-all. When it comes to education, how do we make education affordable and accessible? And this is where you find solutions such as instant schools, such as what today we're doing with UCSAF, where we've gone to more than 300 countries around the country, schools around the country, and put up ICT infrastructure. And we're rolling out free digital content that touches on areas that need to be improved, things like digital skills, things like ICT skills. So this is affordable, it's actually free. Right? So again, not a one-size-fits-all. When you come to agriculture, you find similar things. When I go back to now what we spoke of, collaboration and UCSAF, we're actually benefiting from a grant. So you have partners and development partners in that space that are also giving grants that make it possible for us to get to all pockets of Tanzania. So I guess my short answer is it's not a one-size-fits-all, and that today the cost of production for a unit of data is actually below cost.
Thank you. Lulu, specifically, what are we looking for in terms of addressing the challenges we are seeing in startups?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for a very good question. Initially, I was trying not to take up all the space and go through it into detail. I think, as I said before, we have already been having very good conversations with the government, the private sector, development sectors, and a lot of other partners, talking in detail, discussing every challenge that startups face in Tanzania. And this is after consultations with startups in Tanzania, throughout Tanzania. So I will very briefly mention a few. Since you wanted me to be specific, I spoke about laws and policies that specifically target startups because we know that their needs are unique and they're not all covered within the current laws and policies that we have. But I talked about the regulatory framework being very stringent for a company that is just starting up, and maybe issues around licensing and a lot of other issues that fall within that make it very difficult for that company to thrive. But there is a tax regime as well. I can go into detail, but I think it will take a long time. We know the issues within the tax regime. We know the heavy taxing that a startup is not able to comply or cannot even, carry on the business. And these laws were set up for companies that are already thriving, that are able to afford to comply. So now we're looking at the review, I think we spoke about before, of some of these laws, some of these policies, so that they can be enabling for the startup ecosystem. For example, in investment and financing, we know that there is a minimum threshold of about $500,000. That's for a lot of investors that want to support startups that are looking for 50,000, 100,000 becomes very difficult. So sometimes some of the laws and regulations, which were set up back in the days for very obvious reasons, might not be very conducive for the startup ecosystem now. So those are some of the challenges.
Thank you, Lulu. Engineer Tabitha, when are you going to allow the kids to play with the digital gadget in schools?
I think that's an interesting question, but we have to look at the pros and cons of those. But we can see the government's idea on the digital economy by in the school. For now, for example, we have new combination at A levels, which target computers as the main subject, which was not there before. It was like a subsidiary. So it's a beginning. But we as stakeholders, we can come together and find the best way to allow kids to have gadgets in the school. Thank you.
To be continued. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are coming to the end of our discussion, so I'll allow my panelists here to just give us your priorities in your respective area. Jumane asked us to choose your priorities. We have to start somewhere. So we're talking about creating this ecosystem which involves a lot of people, different interests, different levels of understanding. Where do we start? Bringing this inclusiveness and moving toward the digital economy. 1 minute each, what will be your priority areas? Starting with Lulu, coming this way.
Thank you, Bakari, and I think I'll stick to what I have been putting forward from the beginning, a conducive environment. So the legal, policy, regulatory framework for startups.
Just one. Rosaline, one, top priority?
Top priority for us would be devices. And I'm very happy to see that this discussion is already taking place and there is support and understanding from our key stakeholder, who is the government, to ensure that there is a conducive environment and that we are going towards going up from the 25% device penetration rate that we're at today as a nation to something more.
Thank you. Engineer?
I think for the innovation system, we need a collaboration with all partners. We know the government alone cannot do it. We can provide policies and guidelines and frameworks, but for the development of innovation, we need support. Innovators need support on finance, technical capacities, market, all those kind of things. So let us come together for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
First, investment, and that's what we're doing as the government. The second thing is hard work. You have to work hard really to get moving, but really collaborating. This is what we want. We have to work together, ensure that we're not starting from somewhere, we are moving.
Thank you. So collaboration is the buzzword. Collaboration in planning, collaboration in execution, collaboration in monitoring and evaluation. So that's all we have for today. Thank you very much.